Hey, what's up, Sales Rebellion family? Chris Watson. Just want to give you, a little bit of story of who I am, what I am. So my first experiences in sales was when I was 8 years old. I traveled with my dad to some sales calls, extremely impactful. Got to kind of see him in action and, saw my dad and how he impacted people's lives and what he did in sales. And he had no college degree, so sales was it. It's what he did. It's how he made money for the family. I grew up in a small town where community and relationships and communication, intentionality. It truly was the Zig Ziglar quote of people didn't care what you knew until they knew that you cared about them. And I still live by that. And so my journey from that point was going to college, getting a few regional sales gigs, and then a couple Fortune 500 companies. I worked in automatic data processing, sold payroll. I worked at Johnson & Johnson, sold contact lenses. And then my life kind of came to an abrupt stop. And my dad passed away 11 years ago. He was 44 years old. When he passed away, Dad had always encouraged me because of some attributes I had to go into coaching, to go into teaching. So I put a halt on my corporate sales life and took about a 50% pay cut. Got my alternative teaching certificate. I had played soccer at a Division II collegiate level and even some semi-pro teams, and took all of that into the realm of teaching and coaching. And I will tell you, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about development. I learned a lot about competitiveness. And I would say it made me a better person of sales. It made me a better person to connect with people. It made me a better leader. It made me a better investor. And through about almost 9 years of coaching and teaching, I ran my own business during that time. I continued to help different companies train some sales employees. I had students come back to me that I got the opportunity to work with them right out of college and kind of mentor them on what that looked like. After a few things that occurred, I decided I was going to get out of teaching and coaching and kind of made an exit plan. During that exit plan, I published a book. It's called Earn Your Story. And over the past these 3 years, I've really just tried to really discover of who I am and what I am. I will tell you that I love sales. I really do. I love the chase, the hunt, the competitiveness. But I think I really appreciate people and their stories and their journeys. I like finding people that don't believe in themselves and then help them understand that their story is actually the fuel and the power for them to be successful. Instead of so many people look at their stories and they think that's what's holding me back. That's the anchor. I love human behavior. I love the fact that, when I hold some money up like this, what did that do to you in the moment? How did that make you feel? Was there resentment? Was there excitement? What happens when I hold up two of them, right? Like, what does that do to somebody? So I like, human behavior and how it affects people. As you can see, I'm kind of an avid reader. I enjoy reading and diving into books. I will tell you that if I get into a book and I don't think it's impactful, I'm out. So here's what I can do for the Sales Rebellion. Here's who kind of I am as a whole. I'm a storyteller. Not only am I a storyteller, I'm a story crafter. And I'm currently in the process of creating the 4 Stories Initiative. Here are the 4 stories. Story 1. What is the story that you tell yourself? It is probably the most impactful story of all the stories in the world, is the story that you tell yourself. And what I mean by that is it's the story that you tell yourself when there's no one else around, after a defeat, after a victory. When there's nobody else around and you're laying your head down and you're getting ready to fall asleep and you're thinking, how was my day today? How has my year been? How has my decade been? What is that story you tell yourself? That's one of the most important stories. Story number 2, what is the story of those closest to me? What is that story that I hear from my wife, from my husband, from my boyfriend, from my girlfriend, from my fiance, from my parents? And I break this up into community and environment. And put a post out on LinkedIn. You probably saw a little bit of it, so I won't dive too much into it. But community is that place for support, for love, for juice. It's rejuvenation. It's where I get it. Environment is a place to say it's time to level up. It's time to do better. And I think in our lives that we probably have a lot of community stories and not enough environment. Now, I could be wrong. Some of you may be searching for a community and you have too much environment. It's all about leveling up. You're never satisfied. And there's some hindrances there too, because if the only story that you hear is not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, then you're never really being present in the moment to say, I've achieved X, and that gives me fuel. That helps my story be empowered to then move forward and continue to succeed. Story number 3, what is the stories that I'm tuning into? What are the books I'm reading? What are the podcasts I'm listening to? What are the movies I watch? What are the books that I'm kind of diving into? Whatever it is, we all are tuning into certain stories that are from influencers or other people, whether it's from Dale or somebody else that you follow. We're tuning into those stories. If we're not careful, we'll get lost in the noise. We have to get outside the noise and really tune into the stories that are going to be the biggest impact to our lives. And then number 4, what is the story that you're telling? What is the story that you tell with your lives? What do your habits look like? What do your choices look like? How intentional are you? How are you impacting other people's stories by the story that you're telling? And you can see that those 4 stories individually can then shift into a business. What is the organization telling its employees, right? Story number 1, and so on and so forth. So I'm building out this 4 stories initiative and what it looks like and how it impact people. And, I would just say that, my skills are being a good communicator, being vulnerable. I think vulnerability is power. I don't think it's weakness. It's about being vulnerable with the right people. As I said on the call that we had, I truly believe what we're building at Sales Rebellion is we're building a big mansion, we're building a big house, and then we're going to have open houses where people get to discover each room. And so I would encourage you to determine, what is your story now? What's your present story? What's your past story, and how does that affect your present story? And what do you want your future story to be? I'll kind of leave you with this, and this is kind of the last piece. At the end of our lives, this won't matter. At the end of our lives, the square footage of our home won't matter. The type of car you drive won't matter. None of that will matter, because on our tombstone, and what we're truly remembered for, is how we impacted people and what relationships that we had and what we did in those relationships. I mean, think about it. Beloved father, loved mother, blessed son, blessed wife, those kind of things. You think about those words, that's really what our identity should be in, is in those relationships. Unfortunately, our identity begins to shift in our jobs and shift in money and those kind of things. And so I would encourage you in Sales Rebellion, the goal is to rebel, to help others rebel, and to understand that our story is so much bigger than our quota. Our story is so much bigger than what our income is. Thanks so much. Look forward to working with you all. Would love to chat with any of you individually. I make it a point to try and connect with as many people on LinkedIn via Zoom or phone call or whatever it might be, just to hear stories. I love hearing people's stories, and then also to help them kind of craft what does that story for the future look like, and how can that empower you to do more.